So we just had a beautiful Tsongkhapa puja, and it's a wonderful happenstance that because of today's schedule, we get to do pujas almost all day long. So we'll do some more this afternoon, and then we'll have our teaching tonight. And so it's really a Tsongkhapa day. And this time of year in general, if you're into like the solstice, the returning of the light is a big celebration, or in places where Christianity flourishes, there's a whole, it's a big kind of light time. And so Tsongkhapa too is like the light of wisdom, bringing the light of wisdom that dispels the darkness of ignorance. Like, why wouldn't we want to celebrate that kind of light all day long, all day long? Joshua and Diana Cutler, our friends at the Tibetan Buddhist Learning Center in New Jersey, sent a little Christmas note with a song that just talks about every little light. Every little light is important in its own way. Every little light brings us hope for a better day. Send out your light till the lies come undone. Send out your life till the whole world is one firmament of life, shining in the night, every little light. So I was thinking about our every little light today, reflecting Tsongkhapa. How amazing that we have this capacity, this opportunity to actually share the light of this amazing saint, Tibetan sage, yogi, scholar. So I have a lot of material on him. James Blumenthal, the late James Blumenthal from Oregon State University, had one of the most succinct quotes about Tsongkhapa. He said, Tsongkhapa was one of the greatest philosophical minds of our human heritage. Not just of Tibetan Buddhism, not just of Buddhism, but one of the greatest philosophical minds of our human heritage. An extraordinary scholar, a meditation master, a phenomenal teacher, and an innovative thinker. He was able to take both the breadth and depth of the Buddhist traditions of India and Tibet and present them in a clear, systematic, and approachable way for the maximum benefits of his students. So we are the beneficiaries of Tsongkhapa. He was born in 1347. He died in 1419. So that the light shines so brightly for so many hundred years itself is notable. It's not like he did his work and slipped off into oblivion somewhere, but lit fires that have continued and will continue far into the future. On top of all of his achievements, and we'll talk about some of them, he was also extremely humble. He's the founder of the Gelugpa tradition, which is the tradition that the Dalai Lama practices, which we do too here, although we don't, which we practice here. But he didn't set out to start a new movement. He was a reformer for sure, but it's not like he was trying to found a new movement within Tibetan Buddhism. And it is said that throughout his whole career, in all of his study and all of his teaching, he remained so humble, which is also a great example for us. So it is said that there was that his arrival in the world was forecast by the Buddha. The source for this legend I do not know, but it is told that as he was a young boy in a previous incarnation, and he offered the Buddha, Shakyamuni, a clear crystal rosary, and received from the Buddha in return a conch shell. And the Buddha prophesied that the boy would be born in Tibet, would found a great monastery, which he did, Ganden Monastery, would present a crown to the statue of the Buddha in Lhasa, and would be instrumental in the flourishing of the doctrine in Tibet. All of which came to pass. So one of the things that we most remember him for was Tsongkhapa's insight and his understanding of emptiness. That he was able to articulate and bring back, really, in the time that he was studying and practicing in Tibet, there was a lot of debate about how to practice the Madhyamaka, the middle way view. And Tsongkhapa was able to bring back really clearly and specifically this insight of understanding emptiness to mean dependent arising, and dependent arising to mean emptiness, that they come together to the same point. And of course, Nagarjuna also said that, but there's been so many interpretations throughout the millennia that followed, that Tsongkhapa again brought it back into a kind of clarity that we can still study. So here's a few things about him. A few things about him. There's the magical part, and then there's the scholarly part. Magical is in quotes, because there were huge propitious signs when he was born. His parents had all these dreams. You know, they say that there are dreams that portend greatness before a holy being is about to be born. And one of the stories is that they buried his placenta after his birth. And where his placenta was buried, a sandalwood tree grew up. And in the leaves and in the bark are the letters Om, Ah, Hong, just naturally arisen. Now, our teacher, Venerable Thupten Chodron, is not so inclined to the mystical stuff, really. She doesn't talk about it very much. But when she made a pilgrimage to Tibet, this tree was still there. It may not be today, but she was there in 93, and then I think in 86 and 93. And she saw in those letters, she saw in those trees, the letters Om Ah Hong. So he was, we speak about who was he before he was Tsongkhapa? Maybe somebody knows. But for sure, he was inquisitive, intelligent. He began his studies and took his lay precepts when he was 3 years old. They say he instinctively knew how to read from watching his Lama read. He watched his Lama read, and so he just started doing it himself. And they had this fantastic memory that he could memorize like pages and pages and pages and pages, and he could hear a teaching one time and then recite it back perfectly. Previous imprints, for sure. So when he was 7, he received his novice monastic ordination, and that's when he became known as Losang Drakpa, which is the other name that we know him by, his ordination name. He studied, and then by the age of 16, when he was really well versed in Sutra and Tantra, then he moved to the central Tibet, to Lhasa, and continued his studies. So he studied with all kinds of teachers. He studied with many Sakya teachers. He studied with Kagyu teachers. He studied with Nyingma teachers. He wanted to know everything. And he studied and he analyzed. This is the other part that's amazing to me. He studied and analyzed the entire Tibetan canon. So all the Kangyur, all the Tangur, all those texts that are sitting on our altar, on each side of the altar, that now have those beautiful new tags, studied them, analyzed them. And so when we read his texts, you've seen it when you read the Lamrim Chenmo, it's packed with quotations, again, one after another, of quotes from the sutras and quotes from the Indian masters that back up his points. It's so, I don't know, there's a richness in that. It's not like just his opinion. He'll give his view and then he'll back it up with these quotes. Another thing about Tsongkhapa is, which I think is pretty well known about him, is that he ultimately, there reached a point in his practice where he wanted to understand the nature of reality so much that he really aspired to have a direct connection with Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom. And so at first, one of his Kagyu teachers, Lama Umapa, had visions of Manjushri his whole life. And so Tsongkhapa Jai Rinpoche began to study with him, with Lama Umapa. And then eventually, Jai Rinpoche was able to have the direct connection himself. So there came a point where his visions of Manjushri were so clear that he could ask direct questions about his understanding of emptiness, and Manjushri would give him direct guidance. And so at one point, Manjushri said to him, "You need to create more merit." So if I can editorialize a little bit, right, here we have this amazing being. He's wanting to realize emptiness. He's wanting to understand these teachings. And his teacher, Manjushri, the Buddha of wisdom, where's Manjushri? We had one in here, no? Said, you need to create more merit. So for all of our about I want to realize emptiness, or I want to understand these teachings, or we might be able to take this as advice for ourselves. We could create some more merit. So Je Rinpoche went off to do some more meritorious merit-making practices. So he did, for example, the 35 Buddha practice. And the normal nundro is that you would do 100,000 prostrations to the 35 Buddhas. Many of us have worked through that or are working on through that now. But did Je Rinpoche settle with a mere piddly 100,000? No! He did 100,000 prostrations to every single one of the 35 Buddhas. That is 3.5 million prostrations to get the merit to achieve his spiritual aspiration. He also said that he did 18 sets of 100,000 mandala offerings as well. And so he was doing this in a cave. So there is also, in this cave where he was practicing, he would prostrate, 3.5 million times, in the stone floor of that cave. The imprint of his body is still there. He also used, the mandala offerings that we use, we have this nice mandala sets, we have this nice polished thing, and you do this with your hands and stuff. So you rub the stone over and over and over and over, but, you rub the plate. He did it on a stone. So his whole arm was bloodied and scabbed, and they say, too, that in that stone, there are self-arisen flowers and Oma homes that have come up right out of that stone. So where he practiced, where he meditated, where he wrote the Lamrim Chenmo, there are these phenomena that appeared in the rocks that people we know have seen. So it's not like Je Rinpoche was out to do a whole bunch of miracles to impress anybody. It was simply due to the power of his practice and the power of his virtue that these signs appeared, which helped to, I don't know. In this day and age, I think it helps to support our faith a little bit. I don't know if it was so necessary then, but today I think it helps to know this. Of course, he's best known, probably, at least here, for the Lamrim Chenmo that he wrote. The expansion, this great expansion on the text that Lama Atisha laid out that gives this gradual, steps of the graduated path. The Lamrim Chenmo is the one text that His Holiness the Dalai Lama personally carried out of Tibet when he left in exile. He put it in his shirt when he got on the horse that took him to India and out of Tibet. So we can see that it's a treasure. Clearly it's a treasure. So studying that text also is a tremendous fortune. And I wish now I could not find the notes on when I heard the story, but Jangse Trungpa Rinpoche told a story in a teaching a couple of years ago about someone, and the someone is probably important. You might know the story. But someone was talking to his master, and his master assured him, yes, your virtue is great, you're going to have a good rebirth. You'll be reborn as a human or a god. And the person said, well, I want to be a monk. And he said, yes, you've planted the seed so that you can be a monastic in the future life. And the person said, I want to study Tsongkhapa's teachings. And his master said, it takes a lot of merit to meet the teachings of Tsongkhapa. Couldn't assure him. It takes a lot of merit to meet the teachings of Tsongkhapa. And so we have. Here we are. And we have a great opportunity to continue to practice, based on what we learned from Tsongkhapa. So although he's known for Lamrim Chenmo, he also wrote probably more on Tantra than he did on Sutra, as they say. So his great works total 18 volumes. As I said, he eventually became the founder of the Gelug tradition. He established Ganden Monastery, which was predicted, and from that monastery his disciples also then founded Sera and Drepung, so the great seats were established or set in motion by Tsongkhapa. Many things here to be said. He emphasized emphasized ethical conduct. That was the other great contribution that he did. Tsongkhapa was dedicated to the monastic life. He was dedicated to monastics keeping their precepts purely. He really re-inspired and reinvigorated that tradition of holding the ethical conduct purely in Tibet. I pulled a quote from someone else, and I don't know who said this first, but it said, if you look at how much he wrote, you would think that's all he did in his life. If you looked at how much Dharma practice and retreat he did, you would think that's all he did in his life. If you looked at all the great works he did, so he established monasteries, he established festivals, he created holy objects, you'd think that's all that he did. But in fact, he managed to fit all of these into a single lifetime. And so the tradition that we've inherited is one to be really, to treasure very, very deeply in our hearts. And to today, on Lama Tsongkhapa Day, but throughout every day, to really make our offerings and make our strong aspirations and create our merit in order to meet these teachings again and again and again and again as the direct pathway, the direct method to be able to, achieve what Tsongkhapa illustrated for us can be achieved. To develop our compassion and our wisdom to the ultimate maximum so that we can be of benefit to all sentient beings. And may we be able to do that. I wanted to read his aspiration. I know this has gone a little long, I'm sorry. Again, from his this beautiful, The Splendor of an Autumn Mood is a collection of his verse. They say, too, people, the Geshes who read him in Tibetan, say that as brilliant and as magnificent as his work is, we can't understand what a writer and what a thinker he was unless we can read him in Tibetan. That his command of the language, his command of the poetry, the lucidity that comes through that writing is unparalleled. And that's another reason the Tibetans of all schools really adore him. For as long as, this is his aspiration, for as long as I have not actualized the enlightened state of a mighty Buddha, I pray that I gain a form capable of walking this pure and noble path, that I become ordained and remember past lives. The powerful Dharani memory, confidence, meditative concentration, clairvoyance, miraculous creation, I pray that I may become a mine of limitless qualities, and with incomparable wisdom, compassion, and power, I pray that I swiftly complete the tasks for enlightenment. Should I see the signs of untimely death, I pray that I may clearly behold my protector Amitayus to destroy the Lord of Death and to swiftly gain the Vidyadhara power over life and death. In all my lives, I pray that Amitayus is manifest as my Mahayana master, and that by his power I never turn even for a moment from the noble path praised by the Buddhas. I pray that I never give up on others, to nourish thoughts of my own hopes, but work joyfully with skill and wisdom in fulfilling the needs of others. By merely speaking or hearing my name, may those tormented by the fruition of evil deeds be blessed with the greatest joy and happiness, and may they climb the steps of the great Mahayana. By revealing a mere fragment of bodhisattva life, may there be no hindrance to the bodhisattva way, and may every circumstance conducive and harmonious appear by mere thought. By the truth of the mighty Shakyamuni, of the guide Amitabha, of Maitreya, Manjushri, Vajrapani, Avalokiteshvara, and of infallible dependent arising, may these prayers be swiftly fulfilled.